Hello there, and welcome to this week's edition of Creative Critique. Now, I say this week's edition, it is an edition, but it's a very special one. Being on this night of Halloween, I thought it was only right to pay tribute to one of the greatest horror film directors, well, that has ever been, to be honest. And the director I'm referring to is Wes Craven, so this is a Wes Craven tribute special. I'm going to be taking a look at two of his classic horror films and dissecting them appropriately and hopefully for your enjoyment. And I'm going to focus on two in particular, and I'm going to reel off a little quote. Well, it's kind of paraphrasing a prominent critic, I think, who is called Kim Newman, who described Wes Craven as being a director who not only once changed the landscape of horror films, but not once, not twice, but 3 times. And 2 of these times I'm going to be having a look at. So I'm going to start off with probably, I think it's fair to say his most famous film, and the film that is most associated with Wes Craven. And that film is A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. We all know the story of Nightmare on Elm Street, don't we? It is about a group of young teens, high school teens in America, who have dreams, well, nightmares more appropriately, about a knife-fingered, disfigured individual in their nightmares who appears wants to haunt them and kill them. Of course, this individual we all know is Freddy Krueger. Now, I'm going to be spoiling a lot here, so please, come on. Who doesn't know the idea of A Nightmare on Elm Street? So, what you've got to look at really with Nightmare on Elm Street, in my opinion, first of all, is what sort of period it was in, when it sort of came out, if you will. And it came out, it's kind of given the mantle of sort of the moment where the slasher film hit its peak before it went downhill. It could be a fair point, but what a point to sort of go out on, if you will. Because this film, probably of all the slasher films, Halloween is obviously the most celebrated of them. But what has the most interesting ideas? Nightmare on Elm Street has the most interesting ideas. And why? Because of the idea, the premise behind it. The idea that, I'm going to spoil it, what the story is here is, like I said, these teens are having nightmares of an individual who is wanting to kill them. And what's most be serious is the fact they are all dreaming of the same individual. So something more is going on here. What has happened is that their parents, this actually individual, it's going to be a massive spoiler here. This individual is a child murderer who was arrested and then released, and then was then killed by parents of children around that particular neighbourhood. And guess who is now? So we can obviously guess why he is now haunting the children of the parents that have killed him. What it does fantastically well, of course, is that blur between reality and dream. What is real? What is a dream? What are the barriers in place? Is there a barrier? Can you take something from reality into a dream? Can you take something from dream into your reality? Now, this is why it's such an interesting film to have a look at, and such an interesting horror film, because it's certainly not. When I say it's not like any of it certainly has the attributes of particular slasher films, but those principal ideas are what makes this film stand out so much in terms of the history of horror films, because there's not really ever been anything quite like it, has there? And the fact that it spawned so many sequels proved the absolutely want for this sort of horror film. Obviously, the sequels, without a doubt, varied in levels of quality, and someone may say tainted the original, but I myself have not watched them, so I have not had that experience to taint the original film, and I still think it's a fabulous film to watch. Yes, certain aspects of it are a little bit comical, but that is intentional, in my opinion. and not just my opinion, is it? many other critics. Wes Craven does have this sort of dark humour going on with a lot of his films, and it is certainly prominent here again. So yeah, fabulous, interesting ideas regarding the blurring of reality and dream. An absolutely standout performance by Robert Englund. I mean, he is asked to name a horror villain. Freddy Krueger is probably in your top 3 at least, isn't he? Because that's the sort of impression Robert Englund's performance left upon many cinema goers, many young people watching this sort of film, and why it was such a rounding financial and quite critical success at the time. Made on such a modest budget of just under $2 million, and it grossed probably about 10 times that, just over 10 times that at the box office, so hugely financially successful. Like I say, the critics love the ideas behind it. Yes, there are certain aspects of it that sort of follow regular formulas of the slasher films, but hey, you know what you're going to get with this sort of film. So, let's refer to some of the actual individuals in the film. The actual lead actress is Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy, who is the principal character who we see it through the eyes of mostly, and particularly her dreams. She has a group of friends who include Nick Corey, Johnny Depp, Amanda Weiss, and it's through them we see the individual Freddy Krueger. As you have just mentioned there, Johnny Depp appears in this film. It was actually his first film on screen, which is quite well known. And I'm not, spoiler alert, please. And Johnny Depp's death in this film is without a doubt one of my favourites, and I shouldn't say this, one of my favourite deaths in a horror film, because of there's particularly 2 scenes in the film that play out fabulously well for effects. There's the one with Amanda Weiss's character, who is best friend of Heather Langenkamp, who is effectively the first to die, and the fact that she is effectively she's been killed in her dream, but she's been dragged around her room and across the ceiling, and that sort of effect of it was like a spinning room that they had. So they transplanted, like, sort of, obviously that would be on the floor to the ceiling, and did the camera trickery that way round. And the same sort of plays out again for Johnny Depp's death as well, regarding there's an absolute spewel of blood that comes out of his bed. It's like a fountain of blood, and I shouldn't be so enjoying the fact that Johnny Depp ended up being a fountain of blood, should I? But there we go. So, yes. There was a remake, of course. I have seen the remake. And although it is not absolutely terrible, it's still, I think, if you've seen the first film, it's kind of pointless in a way, and that's quite. I know it's a bit harsh, but I actually think most people who may have seen the new one probably won't appreciate the old one as much, because although yes, there is absolutely quite a bit of blood and gore, it's not quite as gory as you'd think for certain things, and obviously with a modern horror audience as well, they tend to be a little bit desensitized with certain things. As if there's any sort of genre that does age quite badly, it is horror films. So this is why it's important when you see particular horror films while you're young, because it leaves more of an impression and the effect it's supposed to have on you. Yes. So this is my one problem with a younger audience, and I'm going to sound like an old git now. There's just not an appreciation for the older style of horror films, because they feel, oh, that's not scary anymore. Well, maybe if you actually saw it before you saw any of these newer horror films, they would still have an effect. I love horror films. I'm an absolute bit of a horror film, not buff, but I just like the act of scaring myself to flipping death. I don't know what it is. There's something about it. It just gets me. I don't know the exact things behind it, but there we go. So, yeah. Needs to be appreciated, in my opinion, a bit more than it is. I can understand certain aspects of it being a little bit jokey and so forth, but that is a part of the intention of Wes Craven's ideas behind it and things like that. So, yeah. A Nightmare on Elm Street, in my opinion, is still one of the absolute staples of a... Hey, if you're having a horror film showing, it is an absolutely bang on nailed one to watch, as I watched it last night, the night before Halloween. So, yeah, I think it's truly fabulous. I mean, I've not even mentioned the score. The score in the film once again portrays. It's like it is of course like a dreamlike score. It gives that illusion of, is this real? Is this not real? And things like that. And yeah, it's a fabulous score by who was it by? It was Charles Bernstein. Charles Bernstein's a fabulous score in this film. It's a prominent feature of Wes Craven films, is having a fabulous score to the film. But yeah, truly memorable, truly quotable lines from it, and imagery that you won't forget if you see it while you're young, and at the time you should be seeing it. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, absolute classic of the genre, and there we go. What more can I say? So I'm going to go into my second Wes Craven film, and this one is probably going to have been seen a lot more, I'd probably say, from a new generation audience. And there are many other reasons why as well, because the film is Scream, and that was out in 1996. And because, how do I even start talking about Scream? Because it's a film I absolutely love to death. I absolutely love it to death because it's often described as a meta horror film, and the reason obviously because of that is because of such of the references to older horror films, be it Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street also, and Friday the 13th, and The Exorcist, and Psycho, and The Town That Dreaded Sundown, and many, many others probably that have Silence of the Lambs and things like that. So it's a film that lives in a world where these other films exist, and that the general idea behind it and the characters is the opening scene. Oh my god, we're dreaming about it. It's just phenomenal, isn't it? It's one of the best opening scenes to a film you've ever seen. Is effectively there's somebody on the phone saying, "Oh, who's there?" And it's usually like, "Oh, well, you think you got the wrong number?" She hangs the phone down, picks it up again. It's rung again. It's this mysterious person again, and then suddenly there's a realization that suddenly her life is in danger, and it's truly fabulous to realize from Drew Barrymore's performance, the performance of the person on the phone. The way the music plays out is just chilling up your spine, and yeah, fabulous opening to the film. And this individual is an individual called Ghostface. Well, I'll say called Ghostface. He then later referred to as Ghostface, as the Ghostface character, if you will. And so, sorry, I've just lost my thread there. So she's obviously a friend of other people in high school. So similar themes again, obviously to Nightmare on Elm Street. So it's playing up on those sort of horror traditions of a group of high school friends reacting to somebody's death and so on and so forth. And then it's all about sort of what is most prominent. Obviously horror is the main theme, but the comedy. Horror comedy is so hard to get right. So hard. Because if it's done wrong, it loses any aspect of horror, and suddenly the comedy aspects sort of lose any meaning also because the horror's not in place. Hope that made sense. I believe it did. But yeah, so the character's realization of certain things. So there's even things like sort of similar themes from Nightmare on Elm Street where characters are going through windows just after somebody's been killed and so on and so forth. And what effectively Scream plays out as is a who done it of a horror film, because as the film quite clearly in the dialogue tells you, everybody is a suspect. Everybody's a suspect, and it gives you plenty of reasons to doubt everybody, and also then not doubt them, if you will. This is a film I won't spoil because that's the whole enjoyment of the film is that figuring out and sort of interplay of, oh, maybe it's them or maybe it's not them and things like that and so on and so forth. And that is why it's such a fabulous film. It's, like I say, it's one of the few films to combine horror and comedy. It's so fabulously perfectly that it's sort of, in my opinion, a film that should and will go down in horror film history in particular, but in film history, because Kevin Williamson's script is just phenomenal. It is just written beautifully. The time between scares, even and the time between interweaving the horror and the comedy aspects of it, they are so close, yet they're so effective at every point. I will quickly now go into the music, as I previously mentioned about Marco Beltrami's score is, again, I've just run out of superlatives to describe Wes Craven film scores because it plays out fabulously well. It gives it that sort of old style feeling of a horror film, and but I'm just going to do a little, and yeah, he just plays out fabulously. And the list of people involved in this film: David Arquette, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, Matthew Lillard, Skeet Ulrich, Drew Barrymore, Rose McGowan, Henry Winkler as the principal, Jamie Kennedy as well. And the characters are so fabulous to watch and enjoy. There's so much ad-lib clearly been gone on as well, and lots of stuff has been left in the film. I've read afterwards that was either accidental or ad-lib by actors, and that is also plays brilliant into the hands of the director, Wes Craven. He combines everything so superbly well. Once again, many sequels appeared. There were 3 sequels. I do love the film. It's one of those few horror film series I do love. I enjoy all the films. It's one of those few ones, and maybe it's that ability to be meta every single time and sort of take into account the previous sort of films thing. But then there's been films made of the incidents of the film previous to it, and so on and so forth, and things like that. So yeah, that is done superbly well. I say the music's fabulous. The performances are unforgettable in particular actors. I love Jamie Kennedy in this film. I absolutely love him, but everybody is performing to top-notch degrees, and I mean, it is, like I say to Nightmare on Elm Street before, it is a quote machine, Scream. It is an absolute quote machine. I mean, I think I had a little small. Somebody mentioned to me about sort of Matthew Lillard's dialogue after a particular incident, and how it's so enjoyable to listen to him, and I have a particular favourite of that myself. But Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, is the perfect sort of sponge of... She is the Nancy of this film, if you will. So she is Nancy from Now on Elm Street, but Sidney Prescott is the... Yeah, sorry, I'm just talking myself into a blind alley now, sorry. So, what more can I say about Scream? What more? It's brilliant, it's not too long, it's brilliantly written, it's brilliantly directed, it's brilliantly performed, it's unforgettable moments, and it is one of my favourite films of all time, Scream. And once again, Wes Craven here was absolutely reinventing the horror film again. And no one is more grateful than me, because it is a superbly enjoyable film. There we go. I'm going to end there because I'm just going to completely retread things I've already said. So, Wes Craven. This was a Wes Craven tribute. A man who deserves one. On this Halloween night, this horror special. I thank you if you have for watching Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, both classics of the horror genre. I hope you enjoy your Halloween. I do hope you enjoyed me watching me, and I do hope you subscribe to me, and I hope to see and speak to you again sometime soon. So, enjoy, and goodbye. Thank you very much.